The GOAT debate in the NBA will go on for a really long time, if not forever. And that's because it's unlike other sports like football, where pretty much the undisputed GOAT is Tom Brady, golf, where pretty much the other undisputed GOAT is Tiger Woods, hockey, where pretty much the undisputed GOAT is Wayne Gretzky. But I feel like we all know, or 90% of the NBA community agrees, that the GOAT of the NBA right now is either Michael Jordan or LeBron James, but the vote between the two is pretty split. And about a year ago on the channel, I made a very controversial video on why I think that LeBron James is the GOAT and 5 reasons why. It was a long time ago, my voice is all different, but I will stand by that opinion probably for the rest of my life. I think LeBron is the GOAT, but like I said, in today's video, and I said in the title, we're going to be discussing really the truth about the NBA GOAT debate. And that's that there's never really going to be an undisputed GOAT for many reasons, and really there never will be an actual GOAT because everyone's still going to disagree on it. And there's really 3 main reasons why I think this is the case, and I'm going to be going through that and analyzing them in today's video and showing you guys why there really never will be an actual greatest of all time in the NBA until like 30 years from now some guy comes out of nowhere and averages 40 for his career. But in terms of the Michael Jordan versus LeBron James debate, there will never actually be a clear-cut winner in this debate, and I'm going to be analyzing why in today's video. So the first reason I wanted to discuss is that all of us fans across the NBA, when it comes to discussing all-time rankings and debates, we all have different criterias and different things that we value, and a lot of us have very different criterias compared to one another. And I know this is going to sound cliche, but there's really no right or wrong. There truly, really isn't when it comes to your criteria. And you can argue why certain criterias and certain aspects of the game matter more. And I've even done this on the channel, talking about what's more important between offense and defense, at times why all-time accolades shouldn't matter as much as people think they do. But in the end, everyone has their own criteria, and most of the time they should be pretty valid for that. So I think a lot of people know that when it comes to the Michael Jordan versus LeBron James debate, the people that side with Michael Jordan, their criteria is going to consist of more all-time accolades, team success, championships that the team has won, volume scoring, and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to LeBron, people that think he's the GOAT, like myself, think more like analytically. They analyze stats a little bit more. They might value playmaking / team impact a little bit more. They might value longevity a little bit more, considering that LeBron's done it for a much longer time than Jordan. But you get the point. In the end, it really depends on the different criteria that you're using in order to determine who you think is the greatest basketball player of all time. And the reason I say that this is a reason why there's really not going to be any true GOAT is because there's not really an effective way to determine what is considered the right criteria. There are decisions and debates in the NBA where the vast majority of people can agree on, and people can be kind of valid for saying that you're wrong in a certain opinion. Well, everyone's entitled to their opinions. There are some takes, and especially if you go on social media, especially Twitter, and see some of the takes that NBA fans put out, some of them are just flat out wrong. I hate to say it. But when it comes to your criteria in a close debate like this, Michael Jordan versus LeBron James, there's really no right or wrong criteria. I would argue that actually looking at a player's impact and their stats on the court would value more than things like winning championships, and there's many other factors that go into that whole championship debate, which I'm going to touch on that a little bit later as well, along with the different eras that they play in, which is going to be my second reason I discuss. But like I said, really, you can't determine what is a right or wrong criteria in a debate like this, and that's why there's always going to be so much gray area in this debate. And that brings me to my next point, which I mentioned about the different eras that these players played in. And this obviously does not go just for Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Whenever you're discussing any type of all-time debate, especially in the NBA, because of how much the game has changed and evolved, there's a lot of gray area, and a lot of people, there's really not a lot of clarity because people can't really agree on which era was more difficult to play in what kind of way they mean that by. And we're talking about players that didn't even play that far apart. I mean, Michael Jordan and LeBron James were actually very close to playing in the league at the same time together when MJ was close to retirement with the Wizards and LeBron was starting his career. They were only a year off. So imagine comparing a player like Wilt Chamberlain to a player like Luka Doncic in the future. It's literally impossible. You have completely different positions, a 60-year gap of when they played, and it's almost impossible. But it seems that impossible with the MJ versus LeBron debate too, because of just how the game has changed so much from the 90s when Michael Jordan played to the 2010s and the 2020s when LeBron is playing, and people still can't agree on which era was actually more difficult to play in and which era was more impressive to have more success in. And this is so difficult to explain, and I'm definitely on the side of LeBron's with this one. I've always said that from what I've seen with my own eyes, with analytics, that the LeBron's era, the era that he's played in the 2000s, the 2010s, and the early 2020s, this is a much more talented version of the league. It's a much more difficult league to play in due to analytics and the defenses that teams throw at players, incredible players like LeBron James. It's a more difficult era because of how super teams are built, like the Dynasty Spurs, the Dynasty Warriors, the Boston Celtics with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett that LeBron took out a couple times. And it's definitely interesting to talk about this kind of era thing. I could talk about this for hours, to be honest, with this part of the debate. But the truth is that the people that think that Jordan is the GOAT do have a point here too. They're talking about how the game was a lot more physical back in the day, and there was so much more hand checking, and you got guys like Bill Laimbeer tackling guys out there, and it's obviously much more physical to play in, and that's the main point that people that think Michael Jordan's the GOAT make, is that era was more difficult to play in because of the physicality. And I would say that I personally do disagree with this, because yes, it was a lot more physical, but the talent wasn't as good, and in the end of the day, I think that's what matters a lot more. But they do have a point, because if Jordan played in a league where more fouls are called, he's possibly averaging a lot more points, maybe being a little bit more efficient. So you can see both points of view, but again, there's so much gray area, and no one's really ever going to know the truth about which era was more difficult. If LeBron was able to play in the 90s and Jordan was able to play in the 2000s, and there's just no way to make that happen, and we're never going to be able to find out. Not to mention that they never played against each other either. So again, this is such a difficult aspect of this debate to actually be right on, and it's actually literally impossible to be right on, because we don't know what the right answer is. And again, that's why there's so much gray area, especially with this section of the debate. The last reason I wanted to discuss why we'll never actually be able to crown a winner between the debate of MJ and LeBron is that the vast majority of the people, the fans, and the media that have an opinion on this debate have bias, and probably a lot of bias. So, and that can be because of many different reasons. The most obvious ones being people that grew up in the 90s watching Michael Jordan play are probably going to have bias towards him. People like myself who have actually never been alive to watch Michael Jordan play and have grown up watching LeBron their whole lives are probably going to have bias towards LeBron. Or, for example, let's take a Pistons fan from the 90s, or maybe even a Pistons player themselves, and Isaiah Thomas. I mean, Isaiah Thomas does a decent job of backing up his opinion on why he thinks LeBron's the GOAT, but I think we all know that there's some bias towards that decision, and probably the same thing with the Pistons fans back in the days. And the same thing goes for maybe Boston Celtics fans in today's NBA, or Boston Celtics fans from back in 2012. They probably don't like LeBron James that much. And the same thing with a Boston Celtics player. It's kind of the same example, like Paul Pierce, who literally said that LeBron wasn't in his top 5 at one point. I think he still does. I don't even know where Paul Pierce is right now. No one does. But obviously he has bias towards that decision. And you would think that a guy like me as a Raptors fan who watched LeBron abuse the Raptors for a long time would have that opinion too and have that bias. But I do like watching LeBron play. I appreciate his greatness. And the truth is that even a person like myself probably has some bias in this debate. I mean, I just never seen Michael Jordan actually play, and if I did grow up in the 90s, I'd like to think that I'd still have the same opinion on this debate based off of my criteria and the analysis that I've put into it, and maybe I still would, but there might be a little bit of unconscious bias that leans me towards Jordan, just like a lot of the people that we see in today's world who grew up watching Jordan and have bias towards him. So, in the end of the day, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not, people are going to be biased in this decision towards someone who the player that they're more kind of emotionally attached to and probably grew up watching or have a grudge against for some reason. And like I said, it's the truth that a lot of fans don't want to accept. There's going to be bias that factor into these decisions, and that makes it inaccurate sometimes as well. In the end of the day, we're never going to crown a true GOAT in the NBA until someone better than Michael Jordan or LeBron James comes by. The only time I think you can consider something wrong is if someone has a GOAT in the NBA other than Michael Jordan or LeBron, and maybe you could throw Kareem in there as well. He's a very underrated player, but if you have someone other than those three as your GOAT, I don't see really how you could actually logically back that up. But in terms of the debate between Michael Jordan and LeBron, because of the 3 reasons I discussed in today's video, I don't see how there's ever going to be a real GOAT crowned. Again, everyone's going to have their personal opinions, and I'll stick by my opinion, and I think LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time. But I know everyone's going to have a different opinion and for a different reason, and the only thing that really gets me mad about the GOAT debate is when people say that, for example, Michael Jordan is the GOAT and it's not even close, or the other way around, LeBron's the GOAT and it's not even close, because that's simply not true. This debate is very close and will be undecided for a long time for the 3 solid reasons that I discussed in today's video. So that's all I've got for you guys in terms of analysis in today's video. The GOAT debate will forever be interesting, and I want you guys to comment down below your thoughts, because this is such an interesting discussion and topic in the NBA that will be going on for a very long time, years and years to come. So comment down below your thoughts on the GOAT debate if you agree with my opinion, and who you think, in your opinion, is the greatest of all time between Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Thank you guys for watching today's video. If you're new, be sure to subscribe. Again, thank you guys for 1,000 subscribers, and I'll see you all next video.